Kristallnacht, which was on November 9th through the 10th, 1938. I have quite a vivid memory about that. I memorize it much better, I remember it much better than it's to what happened yesterday or the day before, which is not unusual at my age. I was 13 years old at the time, and I remember distinctly our apartment being on the main floor in Würzburg, Germany, and I'm generally a very good sleeper, that I was awoken at 6 o'clock in the morning or thereabouts with a lot of noise outside our apartment. So I got up and I looked, and under the lamppost, of course it was still pitch dark at the time, there were maybe 10 or so SS and SA men talking very loud. I didn't pay too much attention until about an hour later, when they started to come into our building, and they rang the bell and weren't very patient. I think they tried to break the door, and my father answered the door, and they told him to get dressed, and they took him away, and some of them stayed in the apartment, and they smashed all the glass that they could lay their hands on, in the break front, in the living room, in the salon, in the kitchen, etc. And then they left my mother and my sister and me alone, and my father was taken to the jail in Germany, and from there he landed in Buchenwald eventually, after a day or two. I decided that I wanted to go to the synagogue. I heard that they damaged the synagogue. So I went to the synagogue, which was in a huge courtyard, and I noticed that all the books and Taliesim, etc., were lying in the courtyard of the synagogue. And I started to look for my tallit, which I'd gotten, many years before. Probably I had a new one when I became bar mitzvah, but I couldn't find it. The synagogue itself was damaged, but it was not burned. And of course all the windows were knocked out. I found some other people from the community in the same courtyard. And after I couldn't find my tallit, I started to go back to our apartment. And my mother and sister, my mother decided that we could not stay in the apartment the way it is, since Shabbat was a couple of days away. And we went to some friends of my parents, actually my parents' best friends, who were not Orthodox, but that was not of any importance at the time. And we decided that since their apartment was not damaged, that we would be staying with them for the time being. In the afternoon, or the following day, I walked to where my grandmother lived, which was maybe a 20-minute walk. And my grandmother lived with my uncle, who was a butcher, the only kosher butcher in town. And his store was all damaged, all the windows broken, etc., etc. But my grandmother, living on the second floor of that building, her room where she stayed in was in good shape. Of course, my uncle and my cousin, who was a couple of years older, were also taken to the same place as my father, and also wound up in Buchenwald. My father stayed 6 weeks in Buchenwald when they started to release some of the people that were over 50 at the time. And so he was released. He came back 6 weeks later, but didn't talk very much about the experience at Buchenwald, except that he mentioned that it was almost impossible to stay kosher. Actually, this is sort of my memory, this is sort of my remembrance, I should say, of Kristallnacht, 1938. And I think the only good thing that happened, that I was fortunate enough to leave in 1939 for Sweden, and in 1941, when my parents came from Germany to the United States, I was fortunate enough to meet them and my sister, who had been in England, and we made a go of it in the United States. And as I tell people, I'm very happy to pay taxes in the United States, more so than in any other country in the world.